Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Parks, and I'm the Chief of Technology and Research at Manufacture New York, which is a hybrid fashion incubator, full factory production facility, and technology R&D lab. So you might be wondering what I'm doing talking about fashion at a hardware software conference, and so I'm going to kind of tell a little story introducing myself to explain this. This is as much a kind of social talk and a talk about society as it is directly about hardware and software, but this kind of intersection with manufacturing. So I was this kid, equally obsessed with the nuts and bolts of this car as I was with the fine gold piping on these fuchsia 80s masterpieces, and kind of went through, sort of thinking about how things were made as a kid and seeing a lot of kind of overlaps there. Didn't really ever think that there was anything different about those two things. Fast forward a decade or so, became a product designer, mechanical engineer, landed a sweet gig designing exhibits at the Exploratorium. Down the street here, landed an even sweeter gig, spending 6 years at the Media Lab with Hiroshi doing a PhD in tangible media. So struggling with this relationship between the physical and digital, and focused very directly on soft materials, kinetic interactions, biology, all the stuff that's nitty-gritty, dirty, and sort of undefined. Finished and started teaching in the Columbia Architecture School, kind of concept classes around fashion, biomaterials, the body, some curating around sustainability, keeping in touch with the scientific science museum community, founded and ran an algae biofuels company, which fueled my obsession further with biological organisms and their importance, and then settled into running my own fashion technology studio called Skin Interactive in Brooklyn, doing everything from structural design for couture through kind of electromechanical interfaces for theater and dance, and some research into new biological interfaces, and more recently a lot of work with wearable startups as more and more are emerging into the market, and most distinctively fashion-driven wearables, which we'll get to. This led me to a very nascent Manufacture New York, the founder of it, and our mission is very specifically to reawaken and rebuild Americans' fashion industry, foster the next wave of businesses, and create a transparent, sustainable global supply chain. So what does this mean? This is a tag of one of my favorite dresses. Last month, on April 24th, was the one-year anniversary of the Rana Plaza disaster in Bangladesh, killing over 1,000 garment workers in one afternoon. And that was declared, the one-year anniversary was declared the first Fashion Revolution Day, where everyone was encouraged to wear their garments inside out to show the kind of materials and their origins. And I think this one was particularly interesting to me. I literally picked this up to wear it that morning. And there is something sort of, I want this to be an ironic Brookler hipsterism. Like, this should be illegal to be Brooklyn Industries and to be made in China. So, basically, Brooklyn, we can do better. And we should do better, and we can, for very specific economic, social, and technological reasons. So just for 5 seconds about the model of how fashion works, because I know this is not necessarily everybody's area. Historically, there's the model of the couture atelier, where you basically have one very skilled individual making one dress from start to finish, incredibly custom, incredibly expensive. As sort of the Industrial Revolution took over, as with all other forms of technology and industry, we moved into a mass manufacturing model. But ironically, apparel did not kind of have the same sort of economic and scale advantages and efficiencies as many other industries did. If you take, for instance, something like injection molding, you invest in a single steel mold, you can then create plastic parts almost indefinitely for pennies, and the more you make, the less everything costs. The one thing you might notice about this picture is how many people are still in this picture. It's still one person, one sewing machine, one garment at a time. Now, they might be doing the same thing over and over again so they can do it more quickly. They might be using simpler patterns and cheaper materials, but there is still this one-to-one ratio. So there's no reason why scale actually specifically needs to help us in this context. Also, you take into account the state of apparel manufacturing right now. The U.S. is on track to achieve cost parity with China by 2015, and we're currently within 5%. This is due to rising freight costs and lots of complicated things about energy, not all good, as well as rising wages in developing countries, which not only makes the garments cost more, but it also, in the Henry Ford model, creates more demand. And as people make more money, they want to buy more things and they want to keep their products. So there's a new idea that's what is being called next-shoring. So instead of just reshoring, which is bringing your manufacturing home, or nearshoring, which is bringing it to a place closer to you that makes more sense, like, for instance, Mexico for us, there's this new idea that what is the essence of a new manufacturing successful supply chain is to bring proximity to demand and proximity to technological innovation together. And that's the kind of key formula. So this means innovative supply ecosystems will trump labor costs as technology disrupts and transforms operations. One other issue with fashion, though. Sustainable fashion, is that inherently an oxymoron? The very nature of fashion is about change, it's about trends, it's about newness, and this kind of value of self-expression, and having lots and lots of variety continuously. And so this whole concept of fast fashion, which I sort of like to think of as Moore's law for teenage girls, it's actually a really good way to kind of explain it to them, is that we do have this industry that set this up for us to be able to do this very easily. Companies like H&M now has a kind of eco-conscious line, which is sort of ironic when their entire business model and basis is about this continuous turnover with very terrible materials. So potentially it's also a little bit about different models of consumerism. So I don't know if you've ever thought of your wardrobe as a metabolism, but you have things going in and you have things going out, and here's potentially a sort of standard model. But there are all sorts of ways to kind of feed this necessity for change and new expression through varying models of social infrastructure and sort of cultural infrastructure, which could then feed a more sustainable wardrobe. But part of changing these patterns is also about changing the patterns from the production side out. And so what we at Manufacture New York think of is that sustainable fashion is really a strategy that's a triple bottom line strategy, which is environmental for sure, but also social and economic from both the consumer and the production side. So I'm going to let Bob Bland, my partner, introduce you to Manufacture New York in this quick video. This was our Indiegogo video from last summer.
My name is Bob Bland, and I'm the founder of Manufacture New York. A decade of experience in the New York City fashion industry, combined with the creation of independent streetwear label Brooklyn Royalty, gave me the tools to help designers to have an edge with buyers and bring their product to market.
That ability to be able to do small tweaks and customized product range is pretty much exclusive to working locally. And then just shipping overseas, shipping to and from, is incredibly expensive and not manageable for an emerging designer with a small brand.
One of the limitations of working in a residential space is that, I don't have concrete floors, so I have to go outside if I need to install hardware. It would be great to have one set space where I can do all these things.
What's the hardest part of being an independent designer?
That you're doing everything yourself, and that is a lot of work.
We're standing here in Industry City, Brooklyn, the future home of Manufacture New York. This 20,000 square foot facility will house a fashion incubator and vertically integrated production line with all the mentoring, training, and resources designers need to make their line as affordable and streamlined as possible. Here you can know every step of the manufacturing process and make your designs locally to sell all over the globe.
Domestic production creates relationships and allows us to all support each other in ways that we could never do if we were outsourcing. It helps me understand what it takes to make the pieces that I'm making, and it tells a much deeper story because it's about all the people and working components of a collection, and it's not just the idea, it's how it got to be the finished product that really matters. And Manufacture New York represents that return.
Manufacture New York is enormously important as a template for what's possible if people stop and look at the situation and make use of the talents that this area has to offer.
Manufacture New York is a huge project that's going to transform the entire fashion industry. This is a completely new model of apparel manufacturing that is more collaborative, transparent, and sustainable than anything we've ever seen. This movement requires the entire community to make it possible. We can't do it alone. With your help, we will empower an entire new generation of designers and apparel makers to create their products in the USA and bring back local jobs. If you contribute to this project, you can be part of an independent movement to transform the fashion industry.
So we're currently operating a small garment setter pilot program out of 36th and 5th in New York, while we have our much larger space under development, and we're housing an inaugural incubator class of 15 apparel designers and 5 jewelry designers, giving them not just space to work and technology to work with. We don't have our factory set up yet. This is just kind of in-house sample making, as well as offering branding, marketing, and finance advice for business plans, et cetera, and media advice. This is our Brooklyn flagship facility. In the video, Bob said 20,000 feet. Now it's 160,000 square feet. It's a massive building, the largest continuous undeveloped property still available in New York City. What we'll have, we're slated to open in late 2014. We're under development right now. It will house a fashion incubator of 35 to 45 emerging fashion brands. These are maybe apparel brands, accessories. They may be fashion tech. We're looking at a mixture of them. We will have a full factory production facility with 20 to 30 independent manufacturers. We're picking up many of the the factories that are going out of business in the garment district because they don't have the right kind of social infrastructure to stay in business, giving them a better infrastructure around sourcing and supply chains, as well as guaranteed customers through the in-house designers. Then there's a technology R&D center, which I'm the director of, and I'm going to talk a lot more about that. A small run test factory where we can actually try production processes that we work on, hacked machines, all the kind of technology disrupts that you've been hearing about today. How do we actually try to scale those up? Not to produce 1 million garments, maybe to produce 200. And then a fashion media center for, of course, our outlet, which is for outreach, which is so important in this space. Very importantly, Manufacture New York is a social enterprise. It is absolutely for profit, but our whole mission is around the full integration of sustainability as a core business mission and operational framework. So this is the lens through which we measure our financial, economic, environmental, and social performance. This is our building in Liberty View. It's massive. It's 2 football fields, views of the World Trade Center and the Statue of Liberty to the north. That's a southern view to Staten Island. Here's the potential floor plan. We're very excited to just have announced the winner of our architectural RFP, Ole Sanderson, who's a rising star of the architectural field and the most creative and interesting thinker around sustainability I've ever seen. If anybody's been to the new Kickstarter headquarters in Greenpoint, that's his building. And the mission that we're giving him as we're going through design development is what happens when a factory starts to feel like a design studio and you repair the quality of life. I was working in a manufacturing facility. The quality of talent is the designer and the manufacturer are seen as kind of equal partners in this process to get through, and that is reflected in the kinds of spaces that are created and the way that the spaces work, as well as a commitment to all amazing types of sustainable material. He's already researching things like recycled denim as insulation for the wall. So this whole building is going to tell a complete story of sustainability as well as a full history inside of the garment making industry. It just so happens that the building was used as a uniform garment factory during World War II, which is a lovely piece of history that we just recently discovered. So we are bringing back its historical mission. Here's some more things. So the Technology R&D Center, this is what I am in charge of and what I'm developing, and this is where we are entering the technology disruption to push us over to the next phases of being really successful and sustainable in our practice. So this is going to feature advanced digital fabrication lab, a soft circuits and wearable electronics lab, and a biology and wet lab. The idea is that the facility is to research fabrication processes, techniques, and materials for the future of fashion and textiles. That's loosely its mission. And the goal is to infuse traditional crafting and manufacturing techniques with new scientific and technological ideas for novel and sustainable fabrication paradigms. So this is really about hybridizing processes. This is not saying 3D printing is the future. This is saying 3D printing is one step that can potentially contribute to something, you know, the actual apparel production process. You know, there's lots of good things already going on there. We need to just try to infiltrate it. It's 5 minutes. Okay. The development model for this, and one of the reasons I'm here and so excited to be here, is I'm actively looking for partners in varying ways. We'll be doing consulting and product development for wearables and fashion tech, much like the expansion of my own personal studio. We're looking for sponsorship for directed research within the facilities. We're doing collaborative research and development among Manufacture New York, leading technology companies, academic scientists, independent fashion designers. We have the access to the fashion designers, which so many people in the kind of tech side of wearables can't seem to find. I've become that sort of translator person by accident. We're looking at models for licensing new technologies and patents developed jointly, potential equity within spin-off companies that are housed in our incubator, and looking at sort of general sponsored programming events. One of the things that I find so interesting about trying to bring all these worlds together is this I just encountered this weekend at New York Design Week. This is Rem Koolhaas, an architect who has a new house, a shoe company. So we ended up breaking the rules of shoes, not for the sake of breaking them, but simply by not knowing them. So we want to invite people into the space that don't know anything about fashion and are just interested in kind of the machines and processes and materials from a very distant and objective way to get new perspective in. A lot of the technology in fashion has not been addressed from a high-tech perspective in a very long time. Students come out of fashion school with very, very analog skills. They potentially don't even know Adobe Illustrator, that kind of level. So we're talking about there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in this space. The advanced digital fabrication. Like I said, we are not going to be just 3D printing things. I put that up there because Francis Spitone, the designer of that, is one of the designers that we're working with. This is about hybrid craft and tech. This is about new ideas and compositing. And this is about building new machines, hacking machines. We have a knitting machine hackathon on the books. And so looking for processes around that. One of the first collaborations is with Dan Steingart at Princeton, who's a battery technology. I'm obsessed with batteries, and I think that this is really the future of textiles. And we're looking at a new hacked printer with him. And it's literally a situation where he has it working in his lab. He doesn't know the right fashion designers or any fashion designers, and he wants to try to scale it up to a garment. It's not ready to go into 1 million garments. He's not ready to go directly to Diane von Furstenberg. He needs a small designer that's emerging and has very interesting ways of thinking and working with him. So this is the right kinds of partnerships. The second is soft circuits and wearables. I don't really need to talk to you all about this, but I just want to say a small thing about the language of fashion and tech. These two worlds are very diametrically opposed and need to be able to kind of start speaking to each other. And the idea is that fashion designers they have long been sort of dubious around tech. This is an interesting juxtaposition where I was recently on a panel with someone from MC10, which is the circuit tattoo, and he was explaining how it worked with the stretch, with the squiggly lines, etc. And I said, "Oh yeah, it's just like zigzag stitch." And he looked at me like, "Oh my God, I never thought of that. Like, is that how that works?" So we actually have a lot in common, this sort of crafting processes, and we need to start kind of understanding each other better. The fashion industry has been dubious of technology because this is potentially, I love Steve Mann. I think he's a genius, and I know him well, but, this is not something that fashion designers are attracted to, nor do they feel like they have any place in this world. And this is maybe a long time ago, but we're still here, and we're here. But these are very lovely designed objects, but they're objects that attach to the body. They're not necessarily clothing or garments. And the one thing that sort of has been an issue is when something actually goes beyond something that you hold. You can sell the same phone to a 14-year-old girl or a 70-year-old man. It crosses the threshold of personal expression, and then we enter the space of personality, identity. Now, the fashion industry is trying. This stylist was definitely making her money. This was Vogue, a September issue, which is the most important issue of the year last year, and they did a whole feature on wearables, and they were trying their hardest to make them sort of fit in and be part of this aesthetic. There was some blinging things out. But this is really not the answer. This is kind of, putting lipstick on a pig or whatever the expression is. The other thing is, this is a collaboration. So this is actually kind of beautifully made for this one particular situation, but this is not a collaboration. This is Diane Van Furstenberg making something go with her technology and kind of run it through her aesthetic. So what we need is more fashion-driven wearables. This is my favorite one. I'm biased. I've helped work on the initial product. It says launching in 2 weeks, Ringly. And then the second thing about this space is we need to start to think about the return to the materiality and nature of the body. We need new materials, et cetera, which is why we need to go directly into a biology and wet lab. I think, everyone in this community is pretty aware of the rise of DIY bio and citizen science, and really starting to think about how biology is the next hardware revolution. So, there's silkworms already make fiber for us. Let's keep doing that. We don't need to go artificial and go back and whatever. And then, the whole, I love children's science drawings, the cell as a factory and taking it a step further, synthetic biology, tissues as networks. And there's a whole series of kind of tools on the market which are allowing us to do this. So I've gone over, during Fashion Week this year, we did a whole Made in New York alternative to Fashion Week, where we had a space that had retail where you could buy things directly from the runway, and a full runway facility. And come visit me in the showcase tomorrow, and I'll show you a lot of our designs, all different kinds of thinking. This was hardware in my world. Things like very sophisticated meshing fabrics, sportswear, couture, very interesting sustainable printing and dyeing processes, sportswear complete with an awesome wrap performance, and zero waste cutting, which is one of the sustainable techniques which you can see tomorrow, and how you can combine this with printing and color to actually create absolutely zero waste. This is one of the designers who showed in our space, Daniel Silverstein, the winner of Project Runway, who has a whole sustainable collection. So I just want to finish going back to this idea of Manufacturing New York is a social enterprise, and the minute you enter into this space, you end up in a political space. And this has become more and more crucial. We have a collaboration with SourceMap. We have live supply chains. We're mapping everything that's going in and out of the building and where everything comes from and goes to on each side. But basically, it became very quickly that we were involved in policy, and with the city government, the state government, and now the federal government. And this is kind of, we need to be responsible as producers to kind of make changes. The government doesn't exactly know what we need, and we do. And then I'll just end with this. This is from The Nation this year. Vertically integrated factories such as Manufacturing New York, where the designers work closely with producers, have the potential to elevate and reskill the manufacturing jobs they create by bridging the divide between designers, consumers, and people who make things. This is New York fashion's most radical promise. There are many hurdles to overcome, but hopes are high that New York fashion could become the harbinger of a 21st century urban industrial revolution, heralding a new, more equitable era for the city. A quick shout out to our team. We only have one person from the fashion industry. We have lawyers, MBA, technologists, urban planners, and our list of supporters and partnerships. So thank you very much.